Hello and welcome to And What Have You, the weekly podcast where I talk about movies, video games, books, and, well, what have you. I'm your host, Abram Williams. This week we're talking about the sequel to our first episode, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. The Sith Lords, I should add. Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. It was made by Obsidian instead of BioWare. The first one was made by BioWare. This one was made by Obsidian, which is the master of making rushed yet better sequels, as Fallout New Vegas attests. Compared to Fallout 3, New Vegas was a masterpiece. Well, Fallout 3 was simply above average. Personal opinion, of course, but what have you. It was also rushed horribly, similarly to what I believe happened in New Vegas, so maybe they had more time with that one. This one in particular was rushed horrendously, KOTOR 2. And because of that, it lost tons of content and makes literally practically no sense. Someone made a restored content mod, TSL-RCM, the Sith Lords restored content mod, that makes it make slightly more sense, but it still really doesn't make that much sense, which we'll get into. It was still good, though, in spite of being horrendously rushed and making no sense. We'll talk about that. Obviously, spoilers. I review the stories and characters. It'll cover the plot. If you want to play, do that first. It's not really as required as playing KOTOR 1 because it was so rushed. It's good, but it's more for Star Wars fans in particular rather than RPG fans overall, I would say. Star Wars RPG fans, I guess. Alright, so part the first, gameplay. I talked about this in the KOTOR episode. All my criticisms of the D20 system and RNG that I talked about for hours, seemingly, I think it was like 20 minutes in my first episode, still stand. It still uses RNG, still uses a D20 system. RNG is still boring. D20 turn-based combat systems are still boring in a 3D game. And again, I could reference other games, say how the combat in Mass Effect is far better. Eventually, I promise we will do a Mass Effect episode. It's just, I feel like I need to play it 4 times before I do. So it's going to take a while. Essentially, the gameplay is just boring. Again, I don't think this ruins an RPG necessarily, because they aren't known for having fantastic gameplay, and even the best falls far short of such gameplay masterpieces as Quake 3, because that's not the point of an RPG. It's 3D story with options is kind of what it is at its best, which I'm working on putting together a game theory series, like game theory is in writing theory or story theory, if that was an area of study, not as in faulty science and bad ideas. So once I do that, I may talk about what makes a good RPG, theoretically. Basically, though, once I'm done with my tangent there, gameplay's still bad, still boring, still not below average, still not a 4 out of 10, still a 5 out of 10. It's somewhat better, but, I mean, there's still this. It's ridiculous. Missing a door with a sword. And it happens because of the D20 system. It's frustrating. I couldn't find a picture of it, but there's examples in the game where a bull walks up to you and tries to headbutt you, and you get all misses with pistols, literally less than a foot from a bull. It's like, okay, you literally have to spread the weapons, like bend your hands at a 45-degree angle to miss at that point, and your character still does it. It gets silly. There were minor improvements, though. They didn't change the engine, which is ultimately unfortunate, because it was just bad. But they did improve weapon variety. I also talked about this at length, about how Morrowind and some other games really do a much better job with weapon variety and spicing up the environment this way. They did a fantastic job of this in KOTOR 2. There's all sorts of named items of different types, some of which are just not that great. Like, they might be good, but they're outshined by similar leveled armor. That add to the universe. Verpine, Zhao, Alamesh, Mugavka, etc., etc. Charik, it's Disruptor Rifle. You don't use rifles in this game. and the addition of an upgrade system, that's sort of like smithing in Skyrim to some extent. It allows you to make upgrades to put in items, allows you to do different builds, and there's some other combat choices too. Single saber, double saber, etc. An example here is the Jedi Gunslinger. This particular photo is from the Jedi Jesus Let's Play. Look up just Jedi Jesus KOTOR 2 and you should find it. It's a LP where they wrote it down with pictures. It's amazing stuff. If you've ever read a Dwarf Fortress Let's Play, it's kind of like that. It's some of the funniest stuff you will read. You do have to kind of have an understanding of RPGs to get the jokes, but it's really good. Basically, you create gunslinger Jedi that have guns that do as much damage as a high-end lightsaber, which is huge. And you could one-round Jedi with pistols. It was super cool. They added a bunch of feats to improve specific weapon types, added upgrades to make them more interesting. You could play the game literally unarmed, with swords, with a single lightsaber, with a double lightsaber, with pistols, with a rifle. All of those were actual legitimate options. It was much better. Overall, the gameplay is still bad. It's much better than KOTOR 1 because of the improved variety, but variety can only spice up a boring system so much. I call it about a 6 out of 10 as compared to a 5 out of 10 for KOTOR 1. It just is. I think it's pretty garbo still, but there wasn't much that could be done with a short development period, and I don't really blame Obsidian for that. So we get to the harder part the second, the story, which is not my favorite because, frankly, I need like guides to understand the story, and I've played the game for like 300 hours now. And that's not a joke. It makes... There's some minor gaps that lead to big flaws. Like, lacking character motivations or slight under-explanations lead the story to be very hard to explain. It's broken up, as I wrote down. But I'm going to summarize it real quick for you. The prologue takes place on a planet called Paragus 2. Now you'll notice this lovely planet has a hole in it. Looks kind of like the Apple logo. That's because the entire planet is full of what's called Paragian fuel, which explodes if you pretty much breathe on it. It's like a planet made out of nitroglycerin or whatever. It won't go very well. Someone tried to mine it. It didn't go well. There's a crater the size of the moon in the planet, and the entire asteroid field made out of also explosive fuel. You're on a mining station. When you wake up, you're naked because, well, naked in underwear, because we all know you can't have clothes at the start of an RPG. You mess around, listen to a bunch of weird medical logs that imply that some people died for some reason. The droids are kind of going off a bit, the mining droids in this mining facility you're in. Then this old lady in the morgue stands up and says, "Hey, I'm alive!" That would be this old lady. Her name's Kreia. That's what she tells you, at least. Quickly, you end up mentioning, without understanding why you're saying it, that you used to be a Jedi but aren't anymore. And then she says, "Well, we're getting pursued by the Sith. Our enemy," she says. I don't think she actually calls them the Sith. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we should go. She's like, yeah, have fun exploring. I'm going to sit here doing nothing while you go kill a bunch of nerds. So you wander around and you kill a bunch of droids, and you find out that the entire facility was killed because the droids mysteriously started attacking people, and bombs mysteriously went off ahead of time and injured people. And people were doubting, and the maintenance officer didn't know what was happening, and everything was going south. It's kind of some weird zombie horror-esque whatever. Along the way, this lovely fellow in prison, his name's Atten Rand, he says, "What's going on out there?" Because he's been locked in a cell, sealed off from the entire facility, doesn't know everyone's dead. So you meet up, you go over to a console, you call down and around with the comlink in the facility, and you ring up T3 and 4. He's the droid from the previous game. He goes and opens a door, you go through some mining tunnels, kill a bunch of droids, find out eventually that there's this assassin droid who's trying to collect on this bounty on Jedi that the Exchange placed after the Jedi Civil War, with the Exchange being the space mafia. There's a mysterious bounty on Jedi that no one knows why it exists, and everyone wants to collect because you could buy a planet with it. And there's this glorified assassin droid who looks mysteriously similar to HK-47 from the previous game, who's trying to collect, and he reprogrammed all the droids to attack humans, use bombs, direct humans to the dormitories, gas them all, etc. Big, long, complicated plot. You kill the droid, you sneak onto the Sith ship, because it's just docked, and you kill a bunch of those people, use the fuel line to find your way into the hangar where the Ebon Hawk, your ship, is, and escape on that. You can only go one place. It's called Telos. So that's the next part of the story. And this is really... Paragus is kind of the prologue. Telos is the inciting incident. Telos is this lovely planet right here. Now you'll notice it doesn't look to be in the best of health. Especially if I tell you that it's supposed to be a verdant world with plant life. This is orange. And there's this big station above it, above the only green parts. Telos got wrecked by the Sith. It was one of the earliest fights, as I recall. It's the stone planet of Karth from the previous game. And they just bombed it to crap. It's just gone. It's currently in the process of being renovated, if you will, rebuilt from the ground up by these lovely guys, the Ithorians, and also Jerk Corporation, Zerka, which Zerka is Space Walmart, to use an apt description. It's a terrible company. It should die. I can still get angry about it even years after playing these games. It's really probably the best part of the universe they made. These guys are the guys that talk by farting out the sides of their faces, and that's not a joke. I think right here will move and they release gases, and apparently your main character can understand it. There's some hand-wavy reason, but whatever. Basically, the planet's bombed to crap. The Ithorians will shield off a section of planet with this station and some shield transmitters on the ground with planetary-grade shields. And then reintroduce plant life from some invasive species from other planets and some invasive animals and rebuild it. And Zerka Corporation's trying to take over. So, all this is going on. And they need fuel from Paragus to keep the giant space station flying. So you arrive, and Telos is like, it's a funny thing, you're the only ship that came from Paragus, and it kind of blew up. Because, remember I mentioned Paragus is surrounded by a giant asteroid field filled with explosive rocks? Well, the Sith ship, canonically, fires on you as you escape, hits a rock, the rock blows up, and then blows up all the other rocks, and then the entire planet in a chain reaction. So you arrive, and Telos is like, so we saw that Paragus blew up, and you're literally the only ship that made it out. So we're pretty sure it was you who did it. We're gonna have to investigate, you're in custody. And you're like, what, no? And they're like, yes. And you're like, but wait, no. And they're like, you're in jail now. Then you get attacked by someone trying to collect on the bounty, you end up out of jail, they clear you, but they want you to stick around until the Republic shows up, because they want to do an investigation. And then you go to collect your belongings, which they confiscated, and find out that someone stole your ship, because apparently the Telos security forces went to the Stormtrooper school of doing your job. They literally stole your ship in the day that you were held prisoner. It's incredible, really, out of a Telos secured dock. And apparently flew it onto this acidic vapor-covered planet that got completely wrecked and would eat through the whole of a ship. Somewhere into a shielded region. So, turns out that the Ithorians need some help driving off Zerka Corporation and taking control of the project again so the planet can actually be saved. So you go and you help them out and you do a bunch of stuff, and then Zerka leads a full-on attack on the Ithorians, because that's how good businesses work. And you murder a bunch of people and then murder the local crime syndicate and baba boom, baba bing. Eventually you're through it, and they're like, alright, you've helped us a lot. We'll send you on a shuttle down to the planet to find your ship. Illegally. So you do that. You land. Meet this lovely fellow. Name is Bayo Dur. He works for you in the Mandalorian War, which you fought in. I think we talked about the Mandalorian War briefly in our first episode. Basically, the Mandalorians are space Spartans, and you later find out they were hired by a mysterious Sith force to attack the galaxy. They went on a slaughtering spree. Some of the Jedi went to fight while the Masters urged caution for some reason. We'll get into that. And, you did. You led the army along with Revan, who is the hero and, I guess you could say, villain of the first game. This guy served with you. It later comes out that in the final battle, this guy is a mechanic, built the machine that you ordered him to use that blew up a planet and killed the final remnants of the Mandalorian and Jedi armies and won the war, theoretically. It's much later that you learn this, but it's pretty much what he did. So he's like, oh hey, I remember you, and you're like, I have short-term memory loss and long-term memory loss help. He's like, yeah, I get it. And so, turns out he's being chased by Zerka mercenaries. You all kill a bunch of people, imagine that. Break into a secret underground facility, imagine that. Discover that there's a conveniently placed ship, imagine that. And that there's a mysteriously shielded part of the planet on the polar ice cap for some reason. That shouldn't be shielded because no one's working on it, imagine that. Which is pretty much where your ship is guaranteed to be because it would be eaten by the atmosphere otherwise. So you take this conveniently placed shuttle, fly down there, kill a bunch more assassin droids who are sent after you, and then you meet this lovely lady, who was a Jedi Master previously, and was part of the council that, shocker, exiled you. Now this is where the story gets iffy. Or at least I don't like it as much. I'm not sure it's bad. As I said, you went off to war against the Space Spartans. Or Space Vikings, I guess you could say, one of the two. And the Jedi Council didn't approve because they hadn't okayed it yet. So you went off to war, you won the war, killed a whole bunch of people, and a whole bunch of people died. And you came back, because the Jedi Council asked you to, and they're like, face your judgment for disobeying us, because the Jedi Order is apparently a republic with unelected representatives. It's pretty garbage. But, you're like, what do you want? And they're like, we're casting you out of the Order for disobeying us, you scum. So you hand over your lightsaber and leave. This is iffy. I really don't like how this character's exiled for saving lives. You can argue the case with Atris a lot when you first meet her, and throughout the game, too. It's never actually a settled issue. The story doesn't try to answer the issue. Should you have obeyed the Jedi Order, or should you have gone to help the people who were being slaughtered en masse on the Outer Rim? In fairness, the Order had no reason to wait at all. And innocents being slaughtered en masse did have a reason for the Order to not wait. I think it's pretty clear cut that you should have done what you did and taken the war to the Mandalorians to save literal trillions of innocent lives. I think that's the right thing objectively on any level. And I think the idea that you wouldn't do that just because some old people who supposedly have authority over you because of a genetic difference, because Star Wars told you to, and because of their genetic difference, they're also more righteous than you and smarter. Because, of course, that's what having a higher midichlorian count means. That's pretty crap. It's a big flaw in the Star Wars universe that you're always supposed to listen to Jedi Masters, because by what right do they do what they do? So, aside from that tangent on the morality of this game, you argue your case, and then she's like, well, thanks for blowing up a planet, moron, and you're like, hey, it wasn't me, boss. She's like, well, then who was it, moron? Because apparently if You did one action that I disagreed with and thought was morally reprehensible for no reason 5 years ago. Everything you do since is suspect. And you're like, listen, it was the Sith. They tried to kill me. And she's like, you aren't a Jedi, though. Why would they do that? And you're like, whatever. I know you need help because you don't want to die to the Sith, even if you think you are the only Jedi. And she's like, fair enough. So you get a list of some Jedi Masters to Riku and find allies. Travel throughout the galaxy. MacGuffins! With faces this time. Yay! Shockingly, there's 4 planets. Yay! Etc. So you go to Nar Shaddaa. Nar Shaddaa is typically the one I would say you go to first. You should, at any rate. It's the crime-ridden Coruscant. It's just, or rather the Coruscant with the rich paraphernalia stripped away and left with what Coruscant actually is. Scumland. This is where the exchange is based, the ones who set a bounty on your head, so you figure you might as well try to resolve that. So you go, you irritate the exchange until they'll talk to you, and also look for the Jedi Master. This lovely fellow is supposed to be there. Zez-Kael. Yeah, I was going to say Zekal Kalai for some reason. And the exchange eventually captures you. There's this long, complicated stuff. A bounty hunter's trying to capture you for the bounty. I'm talking from the light side point of view, because supposedly the light side is canonical in this game. There's an alternative dark side companion on this planet. But this bounty hunter named Mira, who's been following you around, tries to rescue you. There's some shenanigans. You end up on the exchange boss's ship. You kill a bunch of people and escape. And then what you think is a droid sent by the exchange boss, and you later find out is the exchange boss, accompanies you away. And you find this guy, and he's like, yeah, we done goofed. We're kind of garbage humans. Sorry. He's actually the most likable Jedi Master for that reason. And he agrees to meet all the Jedi Masters on Dantooine if you can assemble them. Because it's Dantooine for some reason. So then you go to Duxun and Onderon. Duxun, Onderon. Onderon's the planet, Duxun's the moon. Both of these are jungle-covered lands filled with horrendous monsters that can rip you to pieces. Or so you're told. In reality, you can beat them to death with a vibroblade. Because game mechanics. So on Duxun, well, you try to go to Onderon first, because that's where the Jedi Master is. You get shot down by a fleet for some reason. So you land on Duxun, and you find out there's an outpost there, so you wander up to it, and it turns out to be some space Spartans who are trying to recoup their losses. The Mandalorian leader, called the Mandalore, agrees to take you to Duxun, where you need to go, if you can help him out a bit. So you do a bunch of fetch quests, kill a bunch of things, engage in space wrestling matches until you prove that you're a pretty legit warrior. You get taken to Onderon, you play detective and rescue the guy's friend from jail, and then get a meeting with the Jedi Master through his friend for 30 seconds before the enemy fleet, this time as infantry, attacks you. Because apparently Onderon is in crisis and civil war between the Queen and then her top general, and the general's trying to kill you. So he sends a bunch of men after you, you kill your way off the planet and escape. And they say they'll give you a ring when you can come back again. So you leave. Yeah, basically that. Then you go to Dantooine. Exciting stuff. Dantooine is the site of what was once a Jedi enclave that got bombed to crap, along with some of the surrounding area. So the settlers there blame the Jedi for everything, because apparently the Jedi caused all the problems. The game does explore the concept that for the average person, a Jedi would look pretty much like a Sith, which is a fair point. They do kind of look similar. So the Jedi caused everything of the previous war, the Jedi Civil War. Obviously, because it was Jedi versus essentially Jedi. So everyone hates them. Then you go kill a bunch of mercenaries who are planning to take place over for some reason. People hate you slightly less. You meet the Jedi Master there. He's a punk to you for no reason, then you leave. Not a very exciting planet. You go back to Duxon and Onderon, then you're called back. Half of your party goes to slaughter some Sith in a temple on Duxon. The other half goes with you to slaughter your way through the General's army, the rebel General's army, to the palace to save the Queen and resolve the conflict. Yay, you meet the Jedi Master. We're going to come back to this because I hate this a lot. Then you go to Korriban. Korriban is the Sith homeland. It's the grave of the Sith. You go there, find the Jedi Master is dead. It's not really a very exciting planet. It's really just empty. You duel with Dark Scion, figure out that he can't die, which, no tip, Sherlock thinks he survived a planet exploding right behind him. I wonder how, if he could actually die, would he survive that? You find out the Jedi Master is dead. There's an interesting side note here that originally this planet was supposed to lead to a droid planet called M478, which would be a planet populated entirely by sentient droids who, through a long, complicated procession of events, killed their organic masters and established a society. There's a mod for that. It's interesting. It's not as high quality as a game, obviously, because it's a mod, but at least brings the concept in. Which is why the Jedi Master is dead, because she was supposed to be on M478. And when they ran out of time and cut that, they just threw her dead body on Korriban. So you go back to Dantooine, where all the Jedi Masters have now gathered. There, they try to cut you off with the Force. This is the big theme of the game, that you are a hole in the Force, that you drain the life out of things around you to sustain yourself, because at the final battle of the Mandalorian Wars, where he ordered the man to kill everyone, he killed so many people at once that the Force literally issued a scream out that would kill any man, but you cut yourself off from the Force. You became a wound in the Force, supposedly. And then, in order to regain your connection to the Force, you had to kill people and sustain your energies by yanking in the Force from around you, and you may even eventually kill the Force. This is where the story gets really dumb, because it's a concept that's not really explained. So a bunch of people die and you become a hole in the Force, which, side note, one of your characters had a bunch of people die and she didn't become a hole in the Force, so there's that. Which drains the life out of the universe, kind of, and then doesn't. And they're trying to cut you off from the Force to keep you from killing the Force, but it's really a ridiculous concept. Yabba dabba doo. This is the point in every BioWare-inspired game where people are such absolute morons that it makes you want to go rogue because they're being so stupid that you can't even stand being a good person anymore. This happens in every single KOTOR game and every single Mass Effect game, as far as I know. Especially the first. The Council is so dense sometimes that you actually just want to slap them. And then Darth Treya, which is the actual name of Kreia from way earlier, comes and slaughters them. Hurrah! She's a Sith Lord. Darth Treya. Darth Betrayer. Darth Betrayer. Who lives for betrayal. Yeah, that's great. Then this guy, who's another wound in the Force, who eats Force energy, goes to Telos to try to kill it, because he was told that there were Jedi on it. That was a lie. You go kill him, somehow, and then you go to the final battleground of the Mandalorian Wars, where you killed all those people. It's called Malachor 5. And kill this lady, and save your friends. Alright, so first off, the story is just horrendously incoherent. Not only is the concept of a wound in the Force ridiculous on many levels, unexplained on many levels, and the whole story is predicated on it without alluding to it, without explaining it. I don't get it. The Jedi Council is really irritating. I don't consider that a flaw necessarily, because that was part of the point of the game, was introducing some morally gray areas, like the Jedi Council being a bunch of punks for no reason. exiling you for saving innocent lives against their command, definitely the right thing to do. And then trying to cut you off from the Force because you're apparently a hole in the Force, even though they can't prove that you'll kill the Force. It's just really incoherent. And Cray has been traveling with you this whole time, trying to protect you, to make you her student, but you aren't. And then she wants you to kill her, and why? She claims that she wants the Force dead in the last 3 minutes, but there's no setup for this, and you don't understand why. She thinks it, like, predestines people, but does it? Like, history shows that it doesn't. It's really incoherent. My difficulty in explaining it stems partly from that. It just, most of it doesn't make sense. It tried to be, this is what a lot of people say, it tried to introduce some gray morality, but it didn't do it very well. And a lot of the characters don't mesh with it, which is kind of the problem. Why does Cray want to destroy the Force using your wound in the Force to do so? Why did the Jedi Masters not want you to fight in the Mandalorian Wars? Why is this earlier version of the Jedi Order still going on about balancing the Force that seems to be, more accurately, make the Force all light side? Why are these characters traveling with you? Why are the Jedi Masters on these planets? Why are you doing this? Why were you cut off from the Force? Why couldn't you have just survived 1,000 deaths and been like, meh, such is life? It's weird. The concept's weird and the game is weird. It had potential. If you were to explain the underlying concepts and were to better develop Cray's character, because she apparently taught Darth Revan too, if you were to do that sort of thing, if there were more game here, and the themes were better put into the game through even just the side quest, it could have been very good. Like, it had the makings of a very good game. The death of the Force at the main character's hand is both a commentary on RPGs and, like, a really powerful theme. Like, maybe you should kill the Force, since if it predestines things. Do we want that? I mean, the game even makes commentary on RPGs, saying even as you killed all these people, you gained power from it and became stronger from their deaths, i.e. experience points. And you did become stronger from their deaths. The more you farm kills, the higher level you are at the end of the game. There's some interesting themes there, but they don't get explored correctly and the characters aren't set up correctly to make it good. Now, I'm going to give it some grace on this because it was rushed. And I think New Vegas did more complex themes than Fallout and did them well. Which means that Obsidian knows how to do it. I think it was mainly just the incredibly rushed production that made it this way. Because if they could have added just a little bit of extra to each of these things, it would have been great. So the story is, also this is a pet peeve, which I'm going to spend like 30 seconds on. I probably won't. I might make a future game theory video out of it. The whole thing where the royalty should always be saved and like sustaining a royalty is always the right thing. For some reason there's themes in a lot of games or movies or books or whatever that, oh, we need to save the king and queen, and you're like, why? Well, because it's right. And you're like, why? And then they give some bullcrap reason. In this game, it's that it's the rebelling general allied himself with the Sith. If they could have just taken that out, it would have been much more interesting, because suddenly the moral quandary isn't between, oh, evil overlord and light-sided queen. It's, do we want to stay with the monarchy? Do we want to sustain this republic that doesn't seem to be giving us much and does kind of suck us dry? That was the Civil War concept as it was given to you. The republic doesn't do anything for Onderon and drains them of resources to rebuild planets like Telos. Is that good? Is it good for the people? Should the general rebel and remove the royalty system? Maybe there should be a democracy. Instead, it's reduced to a good thing, save the royalty, bad thing, banish the royalty. Because apparently king and queen can never be rebelled against. As a true blue American, I hate royalty anyways, and I think especially the tendency to make the royalty the right decision is a big flaw in a lot of fiction. Alright, third characters. The overall on the characters is that they're good. I know, they aren't necessarily likable. That's not bad. Like, some of the best characters are villains, and you hate them. But the fact that you actually muster emotional energy to hate a set of pixels or a set of words on a page is what makes them good characters. Not all these characters are likable. A lot of them are kind of twits or selfish or have their own agendas, and you might not like them. But they are internally consistent. Like, they make sense with the universe, which I'll talk about on the next slide. They flow well. It makes some sense how they got there and why they help you and where they are. They're more pained characters. In the first game it was, oh, let's all save the universe. In this game it's more, this is the scars that these wars have left on its society and the pain that has afflicted people and what have you. These characters are the remnants of these grand religious conflicts, as the game puts it, between Jedi and other Jedi. And it shows the real pain in the Star Wars universe. It's quite good on that level. I personally hate Kreia, and I don't think she's a great character. I talked about this in the story. Her motivation is self-contradictory. She wants a disciple, but she wants the Force Dad. She wants apprentice, but she wants you to be your own person. It's not intuitive, and our history isn't explained enough to make it make sense. So I'm going to talk about each of these characters real quick to explain why they're good. First up, we have Atton Rand. Now, you don't know much about him at the beginning. He seems to be the generic Han Solo type, but with a more cynical attitude. As you go on, you'll find that he fought against space Spartans in the Mandalorian War to try to save the galaxy. Fair enough. And then joined Darth Revan to help fight against the Jedi, because the Jedi had refused to enter the war officially to save innocents. So he apparently became a trained Jedi assassin and murdered Jedi and killed them and tortured them, up until one Jedi tapped into his head and showed him the Force, at which point he broke, ran away, and hid on Nar Shaddaa. That's his backstory. You can train him in the Force because gameplay. He's an interesting enough character, and it makes sense. It's consistent. Oh, the player character probably hates the Jedi for abandoning innocents on the Outer Rim. So would a lot of civilians. If they were forceful enough and angry enough, they might go to great lengths to punish them. Bayo Dur! He's the one who survived the war with you and set off the basically bomb that killed literally like 500,000 people. He has guilt issues. Shocker. He wants to control his anger because that's how he felt for the Mandalorians. Again, makes sense, not fun, but it works. Disciple I hate. I've only talked to him like twice. Basically, he was going to be trained to be a Jedi, but then the war happened and he didn't. And he loves Jedi and also hates them, and you end up training him to be a Jedi. Whoop-de-doo. This lady, son of an Achani general and a Jedi, daughter. Wow, I'm dumb. Daughter of an Achani general, and a Jedi. Spends her whole life wanting to be a Jedi like her mother, but also thinking they're horrible because Atrus told her so. And you can eventually talk her into doing it. Very honorable in the honorable Japanese warrior kind of style of the Achani. Visas Mara had her entire planet destroyed by Darth Nihilus. I don't know if I mentioned this in the story. Telos gets attacked by Darth Nihilus. Yeah, he sucks life from the Force. Her whole planet got destroyed by him. She was the only survivor since there were a whole bunch of Force sensitives, and he abused her into being a Dark Jedi. She eventually can move to being light-sided. She's another internally consistent character, Mira. She was the daughter of Mandalorians at Malachor 5, who got completely wiped out by the Jedi. She moved to Nar Shaddaa, grew up on the streets, and ended up becoming a bounty hunter out of necessity. It makes sense. HK-47 is who he was in the first game, but with less respect for you, because canonically you're light-sided, and he hates that about you. He kills people for sport, and that's pretty much his entire character. It's glorious and hysterical and awesome. T3 and 4 is a loyal droid to Revan, who hides a lot of secrets and works hard to keep you alive, because Revan asked for allies in a mysterious fight beyond the Outer Rim, because he apparently left after KOTOR 1 to some place he remembered from his wandering days. He's got his own interesting backstory. Goto is a droid who was tasked with protecting the Republic and then snapped because he realized he couldn't protect the Republic while obeying the Republic's laws. So he snapped, ended up breaking all the Republic's laws to save the Republic, and became a crime syndicate mastermind that created fake projections of himself as a hologram in order to convince people that he was actually real, and took over the crime world. It's interesting enough. Mandalore was Canderous from the first game. He was tasked with rebuilding the Mandalorians to save the galaxy if the Sith should ever invade again. He feels abandoned and yet simultaneously incredibly loyal to Revan. Kreia, I've talked about in depth. Hanar is the alternate companion to Mira. He's a Wookiee who was taken as a slave by slavers from the first game, killed them all, decided that taking slaves was a great idea, and murdered a whole bunch of humans, took a bunch of slaves, became a mass murderer who was a bounty hunter in name only to hide what he did. All these characters are internally consistent with the world. Atton fought in the war and grew to hate the Jedi. Bail fought in the war and regretted his actions. Disciple was abandoned by the Jedi because of the war. Handmaiden was created by the war, kind of, and wanted to join the Jedi but also didn't. Visas was destroyed by a Sith Master and abused into becoming a Sith, but eventually could be turned around. Mira, the detritus of post-war death, that was left to hack it on a crime-ridden planet, and yet became a better person for it. HK-47, the leftovers of Sith Lord, taught only to kill who can never appreciate anything else. T3M4, a droid raised up by a Sith Lord turned Jedi, who now spends his days trying to fight to protect him. Godo, a droid commissioned by the Republic to help rebuild, that realizes that this leftover bureaucracy would strangle any attempts at that and decides to snap out of it. Mandalore, a soldier who was told by Revan to stay alone and to help rebuild the Mandalorians, who feels betrayed but is also so loyal that he does it anyways. Kreia, someone who doesn't make any sense. And Hanar, a man left destroyed by slavers who broke in the head and decided to destroy everyone else. They all make sense. None of them are really likable. She gets in snits about random things. She's whiny. He's whiny. He's whiny. He murdered people. She is slightly likable, but also just kind of bossy and obnoxious. He's actually really likable because he's hysterical. He's really likable because he's adorable. He makes sense, isn't very likable. I mean, I wouldn't really say I liked any of these characters as people, but the fact of the matter is that they were people for me to dislike, so overall they were quite good. In conclusion, it was good at world building and character building. The game, KOTOR 2. They were fantastic. The worlds were fantastic. And the characters were fantastic. Everything was consistent. It made sense. It worked. You didn't have to like it, because the world it was building was a pretty dark one. It's just that it did it well. The story had good potential, but was incoherent because of being rushed. The gameplay was still bad. It did have that good Obsidian flavor dialogue, though. Like, when you first meet a character and they comment on how nice outfit, what, did you minors change regulation uniforms because you're wearing underwear? Like, that's pretty sick dialogue. And some of the responses you get are pretty witty and pretty awesome. 7 out of 10 for the game as is. It could have been a 9 out of 10. If the gameplay was better and the story was finished and the characters kept pretty much as they are, it could have been a 9 out of 10 game. It wasn't. In reality, it ended up being a 7 out of 10. Overall, though, it's worth playing and examining as a piece of art in an RPG, especially if you like Star Wars.